Hi guys, I'm sorry I have a bit of a cough, but I'll struggle through. This video is called Autobiography Middle Years, and it follows the autobiography Early Years, and that's also available on this website. I want to build an ideal world, and I've had this goal since the age of 16. I'm going to have to be frank and discuss things that are not polite, but need to be understood to understand what's going on. In the Early Years video, I explained that I met Yukiko, and so I was a young man, I was 19 years old, and I went back to see Yukiko, and she started giving me gifts. This was not welcome. I did not want special treatment, I didn't want gifts. What I wanted to do was to hear all of the ideas, understand them, and see if they're correct or false. About this time, I was happy, and I went to bed and I felt really happy and really in love and blessed by Yukiko. And for some reason I called out to God and said, if you are there, please come into me and give me an experience of you directly. Strange, because as I said that, a warm feeling of warm air came into my heart and lungs, and I was delighted. But then it started to spread. It started to spread through all my limbs, my legs and my arms, and I became frightened. It continued. I got even more frightened, and so I asked it to stop, but it didn't stop, and I feared for my sanity. And I thought, well, this can't be right, you know. If it's from God, it would stop and respect my freedom of belief. So I thought, it's wrong. It needs to be rejected. How do you reject a Holy Spirit experience? I started to masturbate, and it stopped. It felt insulted, and it stopped. After this, I started to feel paranoia. I became vulnerable. And I looked at Yukiko. I thought, she knows and lives the principle, but she's safe and well protected within a family or an organisation and centres. I thought, I want that for myself. And I couldn't understand how legally, correctly, I could go forward to receive such a thing. So I decided to seduce her and steal my way into the organisation. When Yukiko understood what was going on, she rejected me and stopped seeing me. I was angry. I felt really cross. But as the days went past, I changed my opinion, and I thought, if that's her decision, I will accept it. And I went back to see her. She wasn't pleased to see me, but we came to an agreement. So soon after then, she got a promotion. She became a staff member at this farm in Swindon, UK, on the outskirts of Swindon. And she became a staff member in a 7-day workshop. And when she was there, she met a guy called Mark. And she wrote to me and she said, Mark strongly resembles me of you. At that time, she told me that the UK national leader, a small old Japanese man called Mr. Abe, gave her a secret mission. Her secret mission was to take care of Mark because he was thinking of leaving the family. So I went down for the workshop, and with Mark and Yukiko as my spiritual parents, I had a conversion experience. I felt really blessed, and I felt converted. And when I went back to Liverpool, I was a changed person. But because of my engineering ideas and beliefs, I didn't commit to join at that time. I decided that I don't understand things well enough and I need to research more. I think what happened next was I went back to Anglesey to see my mum and dad. And without thinking much about it, I put a copy of The Divine Principle by the side of my bed. Then, strangely and erratically, my mum came down with the book in her hand, extremely angry, and said, "Give up this rubbish and evil thing or leave the house." And I was kicked out of the house there and then. And I was upset. I went back to Liverpool, and as part of my education, I had a placement at an electronics factory, a large one, in Liverpool. And there were many, many girls there. There was one girl in particular called Brenda who I felt sorry for. She had badly deformed legs, had been deformed since birth. She could barely walk, and she looked so unhappy, and I felt compassion towards her. And I wrote to Yukiko and I said, "All these girls are chasing me, and Brenda's trying to seduce me as well." But she didn't reply. Anyway, I decided that I needed to teach Brenda the principle. So I went to her flat and she seduced me. And when I was with her, in that intimate relationship, I felt like it was cool running water. The next morning, I went back to my flat in my own home, and there was a letter off Yukiko. And she said, when I'd reported to her my situation, she became really, really frightened and distressed. And she said that the reason why you cannot defend yourself against Brenda is because she's utterly broken-hearted with her physical condition. A few weeks later, I went to see Yukiko again in London. She was in a Japanese centre, and I told her what I had done, and she was really cross, and she said, "Colin, you can never become a member." I agreed with her. What I'd done is talked about in the principle as the fall of man. It's happened in the Garden of Eden, and it happened to me, and I agreed with her. I could never join from now on. From the Japanese centre in the middle of London, went directly to the 7-day workshop in Swindon. And it's obvious Mark was beginning to struggle. Yukiko fell ill. She went to bed in another building, and there was just the class and Mark, and we struggled along. And at the end of the workshop, Yukiko reappeared, and she said she'd had really wonderful dreams about being with her Japanese partner that she was matched to. And she said that Mark and Yukiko forgive you for what you have done. You're okay now, you can join. Myself, I couldn't forgive myself. I didn't accept that. I also heard a rumour at the time that Mark wanted to increase the fee at the workshop, 7-day workshop, from £21 to something more expensive, because he couldn't feed the guests. And how can you learn something new if you can't be fed adequately? But the national leader, Mr. Abe, wouldn't do that. And he said, because 21 is a holy number, you're not allowed to increase the fee at the workshop. I just heard that rumour was going on. I returned to Liverpool, and 6 months later went for the final and third 7-day workshop. Mark was looking distraught. Mr. Abe decided in his wisdom to send Mark on a 40-day condition in the community. He was only allowed to take a sleeping bag and no money, and he had to earn his way in the community by serving and sacrificing people around him and get food like that. In the meantime, we had a new lecturer at the workshop, and it was pretty bad. So that's what happened. After that workshop, Yukiko and I left for a 21-day workshop in Chislehurst on the outskirts of London. So when we arrived there for the 21-day workshop, 3 guys met us at the van. At first they looked quite reasonable, but quickly I realised they weren't distracted, they weren't really interested. And I quickly understood and realised they were not going to give out love and care and consideration and raise the spirit of the workshop to give guests an experience of God. They weren't going to do that at all. And I felt sorry for God because it's one of the main workshops in Europe. When the lectures began, a guy called Peter was the lead lecturer. Now he had really incredible, really good beauty or individual purpose, and he was expert at that. But he had no purposeful whole or sacrificial love for people around him at all. And I decided all I can do is be a servant of servants in that situation and try and raise the spirits of the workshop. To grow to perfection, we have to be expert in beauty and love, and these two should be united together by strong give and take action centering on 100% freedom. When an individual makes an offering of sacrifice to God, that condition is respected in the spirit world. It seems that some young make conditions of love, but not so many of beauty. So that's why it seems when I met this organisation and I said that prayer for God to please come within me, and it was forceful, I considered it bad and wrong. It's because the conditions were not set correctly by the leader of that organisation, Sun Myung. The reason why I was vulnerable to Brenda, because she was a very deeply rooted, beautiful person, and I was vulnerable to that because then again, Sun Myung and Yukiko hadn't set up the conditions of beauty. They were love specialists. Mark was an exceptional leader. He had beauty and love, and it looks like he was correct in saying the workshop needs to have a higher fee to feed the clients. Sun Myung died about 10 years ago, and since then his organisation has fallen in on itself. It's collapsing entirely, and the reason for this is because he didn't set the conditions correctly. So he set conditions of true love. He was a true love type person. I call it an air type. It's the Holy Spirit is an air type. He didn't set conditions of beauty, and that's why this has happened. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed that. Bye bye.